Hello and welcome everyone to IAedChat Live. We're continuing to bring you the latest educational news each month, and we are very pleased to be able to connect with you tonight. We have a special guest this evening. Anese Cavanaugh is here to chat, and she will be introduced in just a few minutes. As you can see, tonight's chat will have a live video stream, and we will take questions from you, our audience members. So if you do have a question, please submit that to our hashtag on Twitter, which is hashtag IAedChat. We will monitor this feed throughout the conversation this evening, so don't hesitate to share your thoughts. We will get this show on our website and our podcast later tonight. If you have not checked us out on our podcast platforms, do that. Subscribe, give us a rating. We'd love to hear what you think of this. And this also helps our other listeners and helps us to other listeners to find us. So anyway, check us out there. And we're going to start with some introductions, and I will begin. My name is Dan Butler. I am the principal of Epworth Elementary School as part of the Western Dubuque School District, and pleased to be able to be with you tonight. And I'm going to turn things over to Andrea Townsley.
Hey everybody, my name is Andrea Townsley. I am a fourth grade teacher turned instructional coach turned school improvement consultant with Grantwood Area Education Agency out of Cedar Rapids, and I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm going to shoot it over to Nick.
Thanks, Andrea. Nick Duffy, principal of Jackson Elementary in the Cedar Rapids Community School District in lovely Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where it's finally not raining for once after what seems like an endless wet season here in the Midwest. Glad to be here with everybody and excited to introduce this evening's guest. Anese Cavanaugh is devoted to helping people show up and bring their best selves to the table in order to create significant positive impact in their lives. She is the creator of the IEP method, Intentional Energetic Presence, and author of Contagious Culture, Show Up, Set the Tone, and intentionally create an organization that thrives. As a leading voice on intention, energy, and presence in leadership and culture, she helps people unlock greater leadership potential, collaborate more inspiringly, create more openly, intuit more bravely, and more joyfully and effectively. She has just published her most recent book, The Leader You Will Be, an Invitation, and is currently working on her next book, Contagious You, Unlock Your Incredible Power to Influence, Lead, and Create the Impact You Want, which is coming out in November. Welcome to you, Anese.
Thanks, you guys. Hi. Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Anese, tell us a little bit about yourself. We want to hear about you.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that again. I really appreciate you guys inviting me on to say hello to everybody and have this conversation on a lovely Sunday evening. My background, I actually started in kinesiology. I started my my life working with athletes. I was incredibly obsessed, is a light word, around human performance and how people felt when they went out on the field or when they went into work with teams, or as my career evolved, as they went to working with their organizations. So I was always looking at performance, and I was looking at impact, and I was looking at how their self-care and their energy and everything tied into that and supported them. So that's where I started.
Oh. There we go. I figured I was muted there. So here we go. So another question for you, Anese. So tell us really about your passions, specifically to education, or maybe not specifically to education, but talk about your passions and what are the things that drive you to do what you do?
Yeah, so this work started out of a true passion for helping people show up better in their lives. And it didn't, what I realized was when I worked with athletes, or I worked in corporations, or I worked with educators or healthcare providers, what I noticed was it didn't matter to me so much the industry that they were in, as much as the human being and how that human being felt, how they took care of themselves, and how that enabled them to go out and have even more impact. And so, with education, it's been a really interesting journey, because when we first started running these events, because we do these 2-day events when we first started running these events, we started to attract a lot of different educators. So I would have principals and teachers in our sessions, and they would come in, and they would come in thinking that they wanted to do this work for their students. Would realize that actually they really wanted to do it for themselves, that they really needed it for themselves to support them and show up even better. And so that lent itself to more passion around education and these different components. I think when, if you just look at like what drives me, I've always been driven by impact, period. I'm driven by impact. I don't care if you're gardening or you're staying home with your kids or you're teaching, or it doesn't matter to me. I'm driven by human beings creating a positive impact with each other on the planet, in the industry, at home, everywhere they go. And also by human beings feeling really good in doing that. So that's kind of like at the middle of all of it. If you look at everything that I do, it always comes back to impact.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, you've written a book called Contagious Culture that has gained some serious traction in the leadership arena. Talk to us about what inspired you to write this book.
Okay, so I was doing a ton of work with organizational leaders in the first part of my career, and I started to notice that there were three different kinds of leaders. And when I talk about a leader, I'm talking about a human being. So to me, it doesn't matter, again, like where you're at in your career, you're leading your life, you're leading in your classroom, you're leading no matter what. And so what I noticed was there was three core common leaders who come to this work. And the first was a leader who, had great skills, created great results, worked really, really hard. Maybe they had fantastic degrees behind them and whatnot. However, they were burnout. They were exhausted. They were having a hard time keeping up with their schedule. Their relationships were suffering. Their health was suffering. And so you guys are nodding your head, and I'm sure anybody listening to this is going, oh yeah, I know someone like that, or I might be that. So what I noticed was that those leaders, that wasn't a sustainable way to lead, to have the impact piece handled, but to not have the self-care piece. So then I noticed that there were leaders who had the self-care piece handled, and they would take really, really good care of themselves. They're eating really well, they exercise, they work maybe 9 to 5, they've got great relationships, but they weren't good at getting things done. They weren't effective at actually creating impact. And so that leader I find actually to be the rarest kind, the one that's got the self-care totally down pat. But what we found was that also was not a sustainable model. It's like, what's the point? If I feel really great, create impact, then why? And then there was a third leader, and that leader was the person who would create really great results, fantastic background, great results, took really good care of themselves. However, they left dead bodies everywhere they went. So they created those results at the expense of the people that worked with them, for them, their relationships, et cetera, et cetera. And so that leader didn't have the people part down. And so what I started to look at very early on in my practice was I looked at, okay, we need to have whole human beings who are working in creating impact, the self-care component, and also the people component. And when we have those three things humming together, and I call that the leadership trifecta, then people have a better chance at creating better sustainable leadership. And as I drilled down and down and down into this work, you guys, I started to create a methodology. This methodology is now called the IAedChat method, which I know we'll talk about. And then I started to have it to where I couldn't scale it on my own. And so I wanted to write a book about it. And so that's what Contagious Culture is about. It's about how do we create that impact and have those three things all in alignment in a way that we feel really amazing, the rest of the world feels really amazing, and we do the very, very best we can to show up every single day. So that's why I wrote the book.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
So within that contagious culture and your workshops, you talk to readers, you walk readers and participants through that IEP process that you just talked about. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about this framework?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm very aware that IEP means something very different in education. So I have to imagine somebody's tweeted something about that somewhere at this point.
We're not talking about special education tonight. We're talking about intentional impact. Yep. So
Yeah, no, right, exactly. So it's usually one of the things that comes up though when I talk to educators is they go, well, IEP means something different in our world. So I just always like to raise that right up front. So IEP is intentional energetic presence, and it is all about how we show up in the world. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an energetic presence we bring to everything that we do, whether we're talking to students, we're talking to our child, we're talking to our spouse or our partner. If I'm going into, even right now on this call with all of us together, there is an energetic presence, even though we're miles and miles apart and on pixels, there's an energetic presence that we're bringing to this conversation. And so IEP is about being really intentional about the energetic presence that you bring into it, and then being really conscious about what your intentions are for what you're doing, the energy that you're bringing into the room, and how you're taking care of yourself so you have a lot of energy. And then your presence, which is all about, how you're showing up in the moment, how present you actually are to the people that you're with, how present you are to your real life circumstances. And so if you look at the IEP, it's like we break it down into 2 points. There's intentional energetic presence, and there's intentions, energy, and presence. We put that all together, and there's an actual methodology. And I am happy to talk. Do you guys want me to talk you through the framework a little bit? Would that be helpful?
That would be outstanding. I think our listeners and our viewers would really appreciate that.
Okay, well, I would love to do that. So, all right, so there's 3 components of the IEP method. The first component is your ability to reboot your presence in the moment. So no matter what's happening, and I'm going to put this in a classroom setting. So you're outside, you step out of the classroom, your kids are inside, something happens that, you get bad news, you have a bad interaction with somebody else, like whatever, something happens. You've got to go back in to be with your classroom or your peers, and you've got to go back in and be on. Well, our ability to be present in the moment, to be able to walk in and be conscious about how we're going to show up with those kids or with each other, that right there's the first part. It's, can I reboot my presence in the moment so I get conscious to what's here now, and whoever is in front of me right now, I'm not bringing the energy from this last thing that just happened into it. So that's the first part, is rebooting your presence. And you guys, I'm happy to dig into any of these deeper, so I'll just go through them at a high level, and then I'll share anything you want. So that's the first part. The second part is your ability to create a very strong energetic foundation and energetic field. And now this is something that we're doing with every single thing that we do. We're always either strengthening our field or depleting it. And the things, what I'm talking about here is how we feel, physically, how we feel mentally, our vibrational energy, like what we're actually putting out into the world, the quality of our relationships. We're always either adding to it or we're detracting from it. And so that second component where we're building a strong energetic field, we're looking at, there's 4 different quadrants in the methodology. I can give you guys a special link that your audience can go and get more information on this and actually see it in a framework. But there's 4 areas that they're looking at. There's their physical and environmental energy, which is all about, how I take care of myself, what I surround myself with, the food I put in my body, my sleep, my timeouts, do I give myself a little bit of a timeout? My office, my desk, my car, my closet. We've had so many people do this work, leave our sessions or leave a conversation like this and go and clean their closet, and then send me an email going, oh my gosh, I cleaned my closet and it completely changed my life because, I was able to clear out some of that icky energy. So that first part, the physical and environmental energy, that's the one I find that if anybody's going to do something with quickly, they want to do something tonight, that's the quickest one you want to look at, where you just go, all right, what can I do to increase my physical and environmental energy right now? Is it drinking more water? Is it cleaning my closet tonight? Is it clearing off my desk? Like whatever it might be, there's a million different ways. So that's the first component. The second component is your mental and emotional energy, which is all about the thoughts that you think, the emotions that you have, really allowing ourselves to have full, authentic emotion, to let ourselves have our feelings. And then at the same time, to also be really responsible about when those feelings get projected out, right? So I might be having a really bad day. And a lot of times people go, okay, well, if I'm a leader and I'm having a bad day, I got to just bottle it up and then go and be strong and lead. And that's not true. It's actually, if I'm having a really bad day, I want to allow myself full permission to have my feelings but I want to process it in a way that's really, really responsible. So I'm not going to actually go process it and project it all over my team or all over my students. The other part that's in your mental and emotional energy is looking at, the thoughts that you think, the language that you're using. A really good example, one of my favorites of this is, busy, the word busy. People love to use this word busy, and you hear people like, oh my God, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Nobody listening to this or watching this loves, well, maybe they do, I should say. I usually do not find people who love to hear other people talk about how busy they are. And if you feel the energy of that word busy, it's very contracting. So if you guys just try that right now, like think about the energy of feeling busy, it's like, ugh. Right? So we want to find language instead that actually is more expansive. So for example, with busy, I'll have people play with saying, I'm richly scheduled, or I'm on purpose, or any language that expands the field versus tightens it up. So looking at things like I have to versus I get to, I need to versus I want to, I should versus, so there's just really starting to look in that second quadrant at how does your language support you? How does your thinking support you? My favorite thing right now in that second quadrant that I'm really in tune with, just at this moment in time, is how people talk to themselves. So, the way that we talk to ourselves, and, self-kindness, one, it's free. We have total control over it. And 3, it's a changeable behavior. So if I find myself talking really negative to myself, or I've had that bad day, or I just messed something up, and I'm sitting the whole time, I'm giving myself a bit of a self-beating, that's exhausting. And so instead, one of the things that we work with people on in quadrant 2 is really looking at, all right, what is your self-talk and how can you be kinder to yourself? And do you talk to yourself in the way that you would talk to one of your students? Because in my experience, what I find is most adults, what they'll share back is they'll be like, I would never say to a child, what I actually say to myself. And so that self-talk piece is really, really important. So there's a lot of different things in that quadrant. Then we move into vibrational energy, which is just all about what you're projecting out. What is the energy that you're actually putting out? What is it that people experience when I walk into a room? Am I adding to the energy of the room, or am I one of those people that I walk into the room and all of a sudden the room gets careful and tense because people go, oh man, she's here. On a calendar invite, you guys have a meeting. If I show up on your calendar invite, do you all contract and go, Anese is going to be on this call with us? Or do you go, oh, okay, she's going to be there. This is going to feel great. So it's really looking at being conscious of what is the vibrational impact I have? What is the energy that I'm putting into everything that I do? And there's ways that we work with this in that model, which is looking at things like, I call it the energetic xylophone, where we have people access a different state. So say, for example, before I came into this call with all of us, I've had a really rough afternoon, right? Sunday night. Let's just say my Sunday wasn't that great. And I come in and my energy is really low. And I know my vibrational energy is lower. Like to say, like scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being it's terrible and 10 being it's super, super life-giving. Let's just say I'm coming in at like a 4. Well, if I bring that energy to this call, you guys are going to feel it. I can say all the perfect things. We can have the exact same conversation, but even though we are miles and miles apart, you guys are going to feel my vibrational energy is lower. So that's going to have an impact. And what's really fun about that impact around vibrational energy is that it is totally contagious. So what tends to happen is the lowest vibration in the room or on a call will win, unless there's at least one person in that session that has a higher vibrational energy and can hold it and help bring the energy back up. So what we'll do, so instead, for me as a leader to be responsible for setting the tone, if I'm noticing that vibrational energy is really low, and I know if I'm going to tell myself the truth, I'm knowing, then all I need to do is decide to do a presence reboot and decide what vibe would I rather bring to this call that would be more authentic. So let's just say I'm at a 4. Well, for me to go to a 10 would be inauthentic, and you guys are going to sense it. You're going to sense that there's something about me that's incongruent. You might not even know what it is, but you just won't trust me. So I'm not going to be able to have the same level of connection and influence that I might if I was being really, really honest. So instead of coming in at a 4, I can't get to a 10 authentically, but I could get to a 7. I could get to the vibration of curiosity or gratitude or contribution. You know, one of my favorite quick stops is just to go into service, where I go, all right, I'm on this call. I don't know exactly what's going to come up, but my core intention is just to serve and contribute as much as possible. So if I can access that higher vibration state, then automatically my vibrational energy will rise to meet that. And now I'm here, I'm at a 7, maybe an 8. From here, being totally present, my vibrational energy becomes higher. So in that third quadrant, we're really, really, really having people notice, like, what is the vibe that you're bringing in, and how do you take ownership for it so that you're not victim to it and you don't victimize others with it, but you actually are able to change it, shift it, and then move it up. And then from there, now we get to relational energy, which is that quadrant. And by the time you get to relational energy, it's kind of a piece of cake, because you're taking care of yourself, you're working on your mindset and your emotional energy, your vibe is good. Relational energy, it's very easy to actually see what's here in relationship and have a more honest conversation with it. So that relational energy is a lot easier to cultivate. So that's, like, you know, in a big answer. Is that what you guys wanted?
That was great. That was great. So, Anese, the next one that we had to talk about was, in fact, vibrational energy. And you did talk about this and how this is contagious, but is there anything more that you would want to go into related to vibrational energy, or are we pretty good there?
I think we're pretty good there. I think the thing that I would want to underline about that is that, you know, there's lots of ways to work with vibrational energy, and the more you work those first 2 quadrants, you know, if you look at the self-care, the physical and environmental energy and mental and emotional, if you look at that right side, which we call internal IEP in this work, because the internal is completely in my control. It is completely in my control how I take care of myself, how I talk to myself, what I choose to put into my body, you know, is completely in my control, how I choose to think about things. You know, it is within my control to say, wow, this thing just happened, and it is either the most awesome thing that's ever happened, or it's the most terrible thing that's ever happened. I get to choose. Do you guys follow that? It's like there's a constant choice point at every moment. So those first 2 quadrants, the more we can do proactively on those and really taking responsibility for our own energetic presence in those, and the way our self-care in those 2 quadrants, the easier it is for us to move vibrational energy really, really effectively. I'm not taking care of myself. If I'm eating donuts all the time, like donuts is always my go-to beat up, you know, treat of choice, but I love donuts. If I'm eating donuts all the time and I'm not taking care of myself, and I'm not getting sleep, and I'm working really long hours, and I'm not managing my time, and then you go into my mental energy, I'm thinking negative thoughts all the time, and I'm beating myself up all the time, there is no way in the world I'm going to be able to bring in a healthy vibe to the people I'm taking care of. There's just no way. And so I guess that's what I would want to add, is that if you do anything in any of those 4 quadrants, you impact the others. Like, automatically they get impacted. But those 2 on the right side, that internal IEP, that is what you have the most control over. And if you are willing to do it and own it, then the other side gets a lot easier.
That makes a lot of sense. And as I said in this question, when I went through the workshop in December, read your book, the vibrational energy piece is something that really sparked my interest. And I think all of us can relate, because either we've been the person or we've been infected by the person that's brought the meeting down or brought the conversation down and just zapped the energy within the room. And as you said, low energy wins unless there's somebody that's able to kind of combat that or whatever it is. And that's where it's just so real, that what can we do to reboot ourselves when we're coming into that conversation, coming into that meeting or whatever. And obviously, as you mentioned, Anese, the first 2 steps to that internal IEP process, as far as getting the sleep that we need, eating correctly, getting the exercise, whatever that happens to be, getting our thoughts in line, getting our self-talk in line, all of those things is also ultimately going to create, hopefully, a better vibe. But if we're not in a good place, talking about what we can do to change that. So I do really appreciate you digging into the IEP quadrant and kind of your methodology. So giving our viewers here a little bit more of what you're all about.
Well, and also, Dan, can I add one more piece to that?
Please.
Okay, so here's the other piece, is that, so I want us to be really conscious, because I know it's really easy to go, oh gosh, I know for myself, it's easy for me to go, oh, I walk into a room, the room's really low vibe. How do I want to handle this room that's really low vibe? So that's one way of working with this content. So you're coming in, and this happens all the time. This happens 20 times a day. You run into people who are having a bad day, or they're just not present to how they're showing up. And you can feel yourself start to get sucked into that energy. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? That's called matching. That's called matching the lowest vibe. That's the contagious part. It's going to be so much easier for me to catch that. Then I catch that. Then I go, my next interaction. Now I'm spreading it. It's like a huge virus. So there's the one side, which is being responsible for how I take care of myself if I'm meeting that kind of energy. If I come across George is always my pick on person. If I come across George is really low vibe, then I have an opportunity right there to do a quick reboot, take a deep breath, get really present and hold my space. And we do this thing called the bubble, where I bubble up. And Dan, you've been through sessions, so you've seen this. I'm going to bubble up, and I'm going to imagine that I have this energetic force field around me, where if I just get present to what's here for me, now I'm more at choice if I want to take on of George's or not. So that's the one side. I'm handling what's being projected at me from another human being. The other side of this, it's equally as important, is for me to be so conscious about what I'm projecting out. This is because we do it to each other all day long. It's just, we're human beings. And so I want to be prepared as a leader, as a teacher, as an administrator, as whatever. I want to be very conscious about what is the vibe I'm projecting out. And so that's where I want to do my energetic hygiene before I go into that room. Reboot, check my mindset, make sure I'm well rested. I'm eating well, like whatever I need to do to my self-care. It's my responsibility as leader to bring my best self to the table so I can show up as best possible and pass out or infect people, so to speak, with positively contagious emotions. Because we're all contagious. It's just a matter of, do we want to be positive or negative contagious? The other piece, one last piece I'll just add on that is, I realized I got going on those 4 quadrants, and there's a third part of the method. So like there's all these little rabbit holes we can go down with this methodology, but that third part of the method, remember I said there's the presence reboot, there's building a strong energetic foundation and field. And then the third part is being able to create intentional impact, which we have a very simple 5-step formula that if you're rebooting and you're building a strong field, that creating intentional impact is a piece of cake, because you just go through your 5 steps. So I just want to be responsible for making sure I gave everybody the full IEP method. I didn't leave me hanging.
Perfect. Thank you, Anese. That's a great overview, but really then a deeper dive into the methodology there. At the beginning of chapter 2 of Contagious Culture, you start with a quote that states, "For good or for bad, for better or for worse, your presence has impact. It is contagious. You are contagious." Talk about your experience with this statement. And you've alluded to some experiences and how you kind of bring yourself into the hygiene piece of that, the energetic hygiene. But can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that every single one of us is contagious. We're contagious for good or for bad, period. It's the thing I mentioned earlier, like we're all contagious. It's a matter of, do you want to be positively contagious, negatively contagious, or beige? And so to me, this is one of our greatest superpowers that we have, is the ability to be contagious and create influence to the people around us. So what that means is that we can take it just a little bit deeper from where we started, which is, if I am doing my energetic hygiene, if I am going and I'm being really thoughtful, intentional about the experience that I want to create, if I can be clear about my intention, you guys, like at the center of all of this, if you really look at this work, it's about being so clear about the intention you have for how you want to create impact for another human being or for an experience or for whatever you're doing. The clearer I am about my intention, and the more I support myself with clean energy and being really, really present, hence the IEP, then that contagiousness, I can't help but be contagious for good. And so it's a choice. It's literally a choice. And, you see it, how I see it all the time. I fall into it myself sometimes. Like, just stuff happens. There's like nothing that's in our control. What we can control is just crazy making sometimes, because there's literally nothing that we can control except for ourselves. And so therefore, if life is coming at me and I've got a ton of stuff going on that might not be the greatest stuff in the world happening in that moment, I have a choice. And the choice is I can either get sucked into it and go, woe is me, and this is terrible, and blah, blah, blah. And I can lower my vibration and start to bring people with me. Or I can take a deep breath, go, wow, this doesn't feel good. I'm going to make sure that I get some support from my girlfriend or my therapist or my whoever. I'm going to get some support on this for sure. But how do I want to respond in this moment right now, as I'm responsible for leading a classroom, or as I'm responsible for leading a team of people, or I'm with my child, like whatever it might be? How do I want to show up right now so that I'm contagious in the most helpful way possible? And that is a choice that that I believe is truly our biggest superpower, is to choose our contagiousness. And it starts with the intention that's underneath it.
So all about intentionality and realizing that, in life, everything is contagious. Your vibe, everything that you put off is contagious. So that's great. Great thought. Anese, another question we have for you, and you don't have to keep this in the context of education. You can keep it in all the groups that you work with.
Okay.
If you could change one thing in the landscape of education or anything else, leadership, whatnot, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, I think I would put it in the landscape of being a human being. I think the one thing would be, well, there's a tie, but I'm gonna go with the one thing that is necessary in order for the other thing to happen. So, and I'll tell you what the other thing is. So the one thing is the art of self-care. The art of being present to ourselves, which to me, presence is self-care, by the way. So when we're present, everybody else benefits, absolutely. However, being present is an act of self-care, because if I am present with myself and my intention is self-care and to take care of myself so that I can be in better service of everyone around me, I think that right there handles a lot of problems. So the second thing, where I was debating was, I was going to say, I would want to see, in the landscape education of anything, is a deeper level and a deeper emphasis on the importance of intentionality, and then with that, I'm going to put the self-care. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and bundle them all in. It's going to sound really cliche, but I really do think that if people were more conscious, if we're all more conscious about our intentions, about the energy we were bringing to the table and how we were taking care of ourselves in order to bring the right energy to the table. And if we were more present, IEP, I believe with my whole heart that is something that helps us be better for ourselves, and it helps us be better for each other, and then it helps us be better for our kids, and it helps us be better for the future. And that is what I would love to see have more value. I think it's really easy to put things like self-care and intention and presence on the back burner. I think it's really easy to dismiss them as the soft stuff and woo-woo. The thing is, that soft stuff is titanium, and it's the stuff that creates an impact on our own livelihood, our own hearts, and also on the way that we make people feel, which to me, at the end of the day, if we're not taking care of ourselves and feeling good and doing really great work in the world and making people feel good and inspiring them to do really great work in the world, then it's kind of like, what's the point? So that's a very long answer to your very succinct question.
So, Anese, this is a little bit off script with this, and I'm sure you've experienced this with the workshops, the training that you've developed and done is, okay, so I'm working on this IEP method for myself, and I'm making these changes, and I'm working on my presence, the vibe that I'm putting out, I'm taking care of myself, but the system is against me. Whether, the system in which I'm working, the context in which I'm working is against me, and I'm kind of alone in this work. What's your best response, or how have you navigated through some of those challenges? Because I'm sure that has come up quite often.
Yeah. I hear it all the time. I have a heart reaction to it, Dan, because I hear it all the time. I think, so my response to that is this. We can't control, again, the stuff that's happening outside of ourselves. So the best bet that I have is to take incredibly great care of myself and to get really clear about my intentions, my purpose, why I'm here, what I'm up to, and what's really important to me. And then from that place, if I'm really holding my space and I'm working on my intentional energetic presence and I'm being aware and present to what's happening, what I find happens is people tap into new ways of collaborating and working with the system that feels like it's against them or that is against them. Like we find new ways to collaborate. So for example, I'll just use myself. If I'm not working my IEP, if I'm not taking care of myself, if there's no way that I have the best resources available to me to figure out how to navigate a conflict in my organization or how to make the system better. If I am doing it, which is the example you're giving, like let's just say I'm doing all that. If I'm truly doing that, and then I'm willing to look at, all right, how am I contributing to the problem? How might I be contributing to the problem? Because what I find a lot of times in culture, and this is part of the reason for writing Contagious Culture too, is that people tend to think that the culture is created out there. Everybody else creates a culture. The system creates a culture. The bosses create the culture. Everyone creates the culture. But what I have found, and I see this over and over again, it does not matter the industry, is that when we really look at it, if I'm pointing out there that everyone else is creating the culture, I have 3 fingers pointing back at me, which means I'm also creating the culture. So if I'm willing to really get curious about, well, how am I contributing to the system that I don't like? If even that's just because I complain about it every night, or I've given up, or I go home at night and I drink 5 glasses of wine because I'm so exhausted from dealing with my office or my people that day, or whatever it might be. If I'm willing to be really, really honest about how I might be creating that culture or contributing to it, if even the littlest bit, it can give me more space to start to look at, all right, well, what might a better solution be? The other thing to start looking at is that it only takes one person to really start to shift something if they're coming at it from a positive intention. So for example, if that system is against me and I'm complaining about it, if I go underneath that, what is the request that's underneath that complaint? Because every single complaint is just an uncommunicated request. That's it. Like every complaint that we have, there's an uncommunicated request or a suggestion that we just might not be conscious to yet, and we're in a default of complaining. So if I can find that request, then I'm in a different position to go and make a request or a suggestion to make the system or the relationship better. Now, there are cases, absolutely, a lot of times that will work. And I've seen it happen in organizations. I've seen it happen all over the place. I've seen it happen personally for myself. So I know that can work. I also know that sometimes people are in organizations or systems or on teams where it's just incredibly toxic and it doesn't work and it's not going to change. And they do everything they can. They work their IEP. They look at how they're contributing to it. They take total ownership for maybe how they've been showing up. Like maybe they've been showing up really snarly around it. They're actually creating the bad system with them. They do all that. They take the ownership around it. They do everything they can to check themselves and it's still not going to shift. Then in that case, that person might decide to make a shift out of that system. So I don't think that there's any right answer to it. The best answer that I have is just really work your own stuff first. Check in with how you might be contributing to it. Get really, really curious. Try and find why the system is that way. There's a way that we all are the way we are. There's a way systems get created that they get created. And so if we all collectively could be a little bit more curious about like, how did the system get to this point where it totally is not working for us? If we can get curious and have a more open and loving energy around it, but also with rigor and accountability, then I find we have a better chance to actually start to create a shift in those systems. That's a big question. I thank you for the question.
I appreciate your answer and going there. Put you on the spot a little bit, but I as I mentioned, I think that's probably a common thing when people are going to throw questions at you like, hold on, Ms. Cavanaugh, let's have a little talk about this. So I love it. I love the getting curious. I love being just overly conscious of what presence you have and then what vibe you're kind of bringing to the table. And I think your tweet here is going to be blowing up as far as every complaint is an uncommunicated request. So
well, I'm so glad. I mean, I think another one to remember, and this is the one that, so here's a question that I ask myself, and whether we're talking about a huge system or a relationship system, whatever the system is, When I'm feeling really, really self-righteous about something, and I'm like, the system's broken, this person's wrong, like whatever. When I'm feeling the most self-righteous, and I know my feeling of self, and everyone's got their version of this. Mine personally is I get really contracted, and I get really like, I'm right, they're wrong. The minute I feel that in my system, it becomes my job to do a presence reboot, take a step back, notice how am I showing up. And I ask myself a couple questions. What's it like for this person to have me in their life? Like, how am I showing up to the system? So these are just places to look. I'm not saying this is where your answers are, guys, but these are places that I find very enlightening. You know, how am I showing up, and what is it like to have me as a partner in the system or in the relationship? The other question I always like to look at is, am I contributing to things going better or worse? With the way I think about things, the way I'm judging, the way I'm gossiping, the way I'm complaining, like, am I helping things go better? And if I'm not, like, what's the littlest thing I can do? The littlest thing. I don't have to change the whole system. I don't have to save the world. But what's the littlest thing I could do today, right now, in this moment, to maybe create a little bit more space and grace in the world so that that system might have a better chance? And that might just be as simple as me taking a moment to be kind to myself, taking a breath, doing a reboot, being nice to one human being, or making a request. There's a million different ways. So it's, again, there's never a right answer to any of this. And those are some of my personal go-tos when I find myself feeling like, I
love it. I love it. So, Anese, we are wrapping up here. And the final question really that we have for you is, what's next? What is on the horizon for you, Anese Cavanaugh?
Well, okay. So, we've got Contagious You coming out this fall. So Contagious You, which is unlock your power to influence, lead, and create the impact you want. This will be the follow-on to Contagious Culture. This book takes this work down to an even deeper personal level around you as leader and you being contagious. It's I wrote it to be BFFs, best friends with Contagious Culture. The two work really, really well together. They stand alone on their own, and they dance well together as well. So that was part of my intention after writing Contagious Culture, is I looked at all the questions that were coming up, and there was some of the most common themes were like, similar to what you said, Dan, I'm doing all this work, but the system's broken, or this person's not doing it, or my boss is still giving me a hard time. So this next book is written as a love letter of sorts to people to go, all right, here's how you personally can deepen your IEP practice even more. Here are some even more, here are some other ways to start working on it that I've created since writing Contagious Culture as the work has grown. And then also, oh, by the way, if you happen to be George or Georgette, the two people who are always the lowest vibration in the room, who usually think that this has nothing to do with them, who are like this, who are going, I don't think that that's me. If you're willing to get curious about how you might be creating results that you don't love, or how you might be creating a system that doesn't work, if you can get curious about that, then this book is also written for George and Georgette to start looking at, okay, how do we start to shift it so we all start to work together like this and be positively contagious? That's the next big thing that's coming up. The other thing that's coming up that's really fun is, we've done stewardship training, which Dan, you're familiar with because you met Dana Schoen, who's one of our IEP stewards in education. And I've had the gift of being able to watch some of these people inside school districts learn how to teach the fundamentals and really take it out there to their districts. And so we've just created another level of programming for them, or for everybody actually, which is called an activator program. So these activators now, basically, when they read Contagious Culture, or they come to a session like you did, Dan, or they get exposed to the work and they're like, we really want to bring this into our classrooms or into our school districts, they can actually now start to participate in what we call the activator program, so we can pay this work forward more holistically in the world versus it being all dependent on like a group of 10 people. That's coming up. We've got an IEP Live coming up in October in Sacramento, which actually, so far it's really funny. We have several educators that have signed up. So we've got that coming up, and we have Andrea. Actually, are you coming to that one? No? Okay. I think there's an Andrea roster. I just put it together in my brain just a second. I was like, wait a minute, that could be really fun. But we have IEP Live coming up. And then And then I'm going to be doing a lot of speaking and running around and promoting the next book, or not promoting it, but introducing it and loving the heck out of it, I hope. So that's what's next.
Well, that's exciting stuff. We're really excited about the things on the horizon for you, and we're appreciative of you spending some time with us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the resources that our reader or our watchers or listeners can go through to find some more information. You can find Anese on Twitter at Anese Cavanaugh, website www.anesecavanaugh.com, books, Contagious Culture, The Leader You Will Be, and then coming out this fall, Contagious You. And then there's also a blog that you can look into, #showing up with Anese Cavanaugh, blog.anesecavanaugh.com. So Anese, I'm going to just give you a minute or two to share some closing thoughts with our viewers before Dan talks about some national and regional events we have coming up.
Great. Thank you. I think my closing thoughts are just this. It's for everybody listening to this right now to just take a moment, to take a deep breath, and to think about this tomorrow morning. So it's Sunday. We're actually moving in, I know, for many people into, I don't know where you guys are at your school cycle, but I know for me, I've got my 8th grader graduating this week, my 12th graders graduating. There's a lot of stuff happening. And so my closing thoughts are an invitation really to anybody that's hearing this, whether you hear it now or you hear it in 6 months from now, to take a really good deep breath, do a quick reboot, and just think about the experience you want to create for yourself and for the people that you are leading and loving in your life. What is the experience you want to create? And just set an intention around that. And I promise you, if nothing else on this entire conversation resonates, if you can just take a breath and set an intention and really consider that experience that you want to create for yourself and for other people, I promise you in there is a little bit of space and grace that is going to help you create even more impact in your life. So that is what I will leave you with.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much, Anese, for being here with us this evening. We greatly appreciate it. To our viewers here, I'm going to go through some upcoming Iowa regional national events. First up, we have the What Great Educators Do Differently conference. This is a leadership summit coming up on September 30th of 2019. And you can visit connected.org. So connected.org for more details. Check that out. And then also, we've mentioned this a couple of times, but John Hattie and Peter DeWitt are coming to Grant Wood AEA on October 16th. That will be in Cedar Rapids, and go to gwaea.org for more details. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your thoughts, everybody, on Iowa EdChat Live. This is usually the last Sunday of every month. We continue to have a great lineup for this spring and summer, so we're so excited to share that with you. It is always great learning with all of you. A very special thank you, as I said, to Anese Cavanaugh. Thank you so much for being with us, Anese, tonight. Loved what you had to say, your message. It's just inspiring, and we're just very grateful that you were able to take some time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Be sure to follow some of the new friends that you met and interacted with on Iowa EdChat this evening, and check out our hashtag at all times, hashtag IAedChat, to continue the conversation. You will also find a great deal of resources on our website. That is tinyurl.com/IAedChat. Guys, we're going to be back next week with another great topic. And until that time, be the change.